Lily walked into the store with a bright sparkle in her eyes, her heart racing with excitement. She had been waiting for this moment for weeks, the opportunity to pick out the perfect dress for the upcoming gala ball. The event was not just any gathering. It was a night celebrating young artists, and Lily, with her passion for painting, had earned an invitation. This was her chance to shine, to show that she belonged in a world that often overlooked her. The boutique was buzzing with customers, and the scent of new fabric mixed with the subtle aroma of expensive perfume. She took a deep breath and stepped inside, her fingers trailing along racks of beautiful dresses, each one more dazzling than the last. But then, as if guided by fate, she saw it, the perfect red dress. It was the last one left, displayed elegantly as if it had been waiting for her. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for it, the silky fabric smooth under her touch. She knew instantly that this was the dress. It wasn't just about the way it looked. It was about how it made her feel, strong, confident, worthy. But just as she pulled it off the rack, two girls nearby exchanged knowing glances and smirked. "Seriously? She thinks she can pull off that dress?" One of them whispered just loud enough for Lily to hear. The second girl giggled, twirling a strand of her sleek brunette hair. "Oh, please, she'll look ridiculous." Lily's fingers tightened around the fabric, her heart sinking. She knew these girls. Jessica and Lauren, two students from her college who always seemed to take pleasure in making others feel small. They came from wealthy families, always dressed in designer clothes, always acting as though they owned the world. Taking a steadying breath, Lily ignored them. She had dealt with their cruel words before. This time she refused to let them ruin her moment. She turned and headed toward the fitting room, determined to try on the dress that made her feel like she could take on the world. As she pulled the curtains shut behind her, she could still hear their voices outside. "Oh my God, she actually thinks she's going to the gala in that?" Jessica snickered. Lauren let out a fake sigh. "Poor thing. No matter what she wears, she'll never fit in." Lily's hands trembled slightly as she slipped into the dress. But as soon as the fabric hugged her figure, she looked at herself in the mirror, and for the first time in a long time, she felt truly beautiful. She took a deep breath, brushing her fingers over the soft material. She wasn't going to let their words get to her, but before she could step out, the voices grew louder. "You can hear us, right, Lily?" Jessica's voice dripped with mock concern. "Oops, I forgot. These dressing rooms aren't soundproof." Lauren snickered. "Relax, babe. We're just saying what everyone else is thinking." Lily clenched her fists, trying to block out their words. But then, suddenly, another voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" The fitting room fell silent. Lily's breath hitched as she pulled the curtain aside, stepping out in her dress. Standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets, an expression of quiet intensity on his face, was none other than Keanu Reeves. Jessica and Lauren's smug expressions froze. Lily's heart pounded. Was this really happening? Keanu's gaze shifted from the two girls to Lily, his expression softening slightly. "That's a beautiful dress," he said simply. Lily swallowed hard, barely able to process what was happening. Jessica, recovering quickly, plastered on a sweet but obviously fake smile. "Oh, wow, you're Keanu Reeves." Keanu didn't react, his gaze steady. "And you are." Jessica let out a nervous chuckle, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "I mean, we were just chatting with our friend Lily here." Keanu tilted his head slightly. "Friend?" Lauren nodded quickly. "Yeah, just some friendly advice about, fashion choices." Keanu's jaw tensed. "Interesting, because from where I'm standing, it doesn't sound like advice. It sounds like bullying." Jessica's smile faltered. "What? No, we were just... Let me ask you something." Keanu took a slow step forward, his voice calm but firm. "Have you ever walked into a room and felt like everyone had already decided who you were before you even spoke?" Jessica blinked. I don't... Have you ever been judged, dismissed, ignored, not because of what you did, but just because of who you are?" Silence. Keanu glanced at Lily. "Because that's what you're doing to her." Jessica's face turned slightly red. "We were just being honest." "No," Keanu interrupted smoothly. "You were being cruel." Lauren shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Jessica as if hoping she had a way out of this. Keanu let out a small breath, shaking his head. You think you're helping, but the truth is, you're afraid. Jessica frowned. Afraid? Of what? Keanu gave a small knowing smile. Of what happens when someone you underestimated proves you wrong. For the first time, Jessica had nothing to say. Lily felt something shift inside her. For years, she had been made to feel small, to believe she wasn't enough. But now she saw the truth. She straightened her shoulders and met Jessica's gaze. I'm going to the gala, and I'm going to wear this dress. Jessica opened her mouth, then snapped it shut, her lips pressing into a thin line. Without another word, she turned on her heel and stalked away, Lauren quickly following behind. Keanu watched them go before turning back to Lily with a warm smile. You handled that well. Lily let out a shaky breath and laughed nervously. I don't know what just happened. Keanu chuckled. You stood up for yourself. That's what happened. Lily glanced down at the red dress, the same dress she had doubted just moments ago. But now it felt different. It felt right. Keanu gave her a nod. I think you're going to look great tonight. And with that, he walked away, leaving Lily standing there, her heart still racing. But this time, for all the right reasons. Lily stood in the fitting room, still reeling from what had just happened. Keanu Reeves, the Keanu Reeves, had stood up for her. But more than that, he had helped her realize something important. She didn't need permission to belong. Her grip on the red dress tightened as she made her way to the checkout counter. She could feel the eyes of the other customers on her, some curious, some approving. But for the first time, she didn't care what they thought. As she handed the dress to the cashier, a familiar voice spoke beside her. Hope you're not letting them ruin your moment. Lily turned, her eyes widening as she saw Keanu standing next to her, hands still casually tucked into his pockets. No, she said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Actually, I think I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Keanu gave a small nod. Good, because the truth is, you don't need their permission to be anywhere. Lily swallowed, then took the bag with her new dress. She hesitated for a moment before asking, Can I ask you something? Keanu tilted his head slightly, encouraging her to go on. Do you always step in like that when you see something wrong? He smiled, but there was something almost melancholic in his expression. I used to be the guy people didn't think belonged. I know what it's like to hear that you shouldn't be somewhere. Lily was silent for a moment, letting his words sink in. Keanu Reeves, one of the biggest actors in Hollywood, had once felt like an outsider. It was almost impossible to believe. And how did you deal with it? She finally asked. He chuckled. I did what you just did. I kept going. Lily smiled, gripping the bag a little tighter. Then I guess I'm on the right path. Keanu nodded, and just as he turned to leave, a sharp voice cut through the store. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Lily and Keanu both turned. Jessica and Lauren were back, and this time Jessica looked furious. Sorry, but I just can't let this go, Jessica said, storming toward them. Her eyes burned with frustration. Lauren folded her arms, scanning Lily up and down with a sneer. She actually thinks she can just show up at the gala and pretend she belongs. Lily's stomach twisted, but something inside her refused to let her back down. I am going to the gala, she said firmly. Jessica let out a sharp laugh. You really don't get it, do you? It's not just about what you wear, Lily. She stepped closer, lowering her voice into a cruel whisper. It's about who you are. Keanu shifted beside Lily as if ready to intervene. But Lily surprised even herself by raising a hand slightly, stopping him. She could handle this. And who am I, Jessica? She asked, crossing her arms. Jessica smirked, like she had been waiting for this moment. You're that girl who walks the hallways alone, the one no one invites to the real parties, the one people talk to out of politeness. You're a nobody. For a moment, Lily felt the familiar sting of Jessica's words, but then something in her clicked. She tilted her head and smiled. Then you're scared. Jessica blinked. What? You're scared, Lily repeated, feeling her confidence grow. Because if I'm a nobody, then why do you care so much? Jessica's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Lauren shifted uncomfortably beside her. Keanu smirked, arms crossed. That's an excellent question. Jessica clenched her fists, her composure slipping. You don't get it. Lily took a slow step forward. And what exactly makes this world yours? Your parents' money? The fact that you think you get to decide who belongs? Jessica hesitated. For the first time, she had no answer. Lily inhaled deeply, then delivered the final blow. The truth is, you were never able to ignore me. You always saw me. And that pisses you off because I don't need your approval to exist. Jessica stood frozen, her expression unreadable, but her eyes burned with frustration. You're going to regret this, she whispered, then spun on her heel and stormed out. Lauren, clearly unsure of what else to do, hurried after her. The silence that followed was thick, as if the entire store had been holding its breath. Keanu turned to Lily with a proud smile. You just won that argument beautifully. Lily exhaled sharply, then let out a nervous laugh. I can't believe that just happened. Keanu patted her shoulder lightly. Well, you didn't just believe it. You made it happen. Lily looked down at the shopping bag in her hands, then back at Keanu. There's only one thing left to do, she said with a grin. Keanu raised an eyebrow. What's that? Lily smiled. I need to get ready for the gala. Lily's car moved smoothly through the city streets, her hands folded tightly in her lap as she stared out the window. The night of the gala had finally arrived. She had spent the entire day preparing, but it wasn't just about getting dressed. Something inside her had shifted since that confrontation in the store. For the first time in her life, she wasn't trying to fit in. She wasn't dressing to impress Jessica or Lauren. She wasn't worried about whispers or judgmental stares. She was simply being herself. The red dress fit her perfectly, hugging her in all the right places. Her hair was styled in a simple but elegant way, and she had kept her makeup light, just enough to highlight her features without hiding who she really was. When the car pulled up to the grand entrance, she took a deep breath. Golden lights illuminated the venue, and a long red carpet stretched toward the towering doors. Guests in dazzling gowns and sharp suits moved gracefully across the courtyard, chatting and laughing as they made their way inside. For a brief moment, hesitation crept in. Then Keanu's words echoed in her mind. You don't need their permission to be anywhere. And with that, she stepped out of the car and walked inside. She could feel the stares instantly. Some people glanced at her before turning back to their conversations. Others gave her a more scrutinizing look, as if trying to figure out what she was doing there. But Lily didn't let it shake her. She grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and continued walking, her head held high. Then, just as she reached the main hall, she heard a familiar whisper. She actually showed up. Lily turned her head slightly and spotted Jessica and Lauren standing near the grand staircase. Jessica held a glass of wine, but the way she gripped it made it obvious she was far from relaxed. Lauren leaned in and whispered something, making Jessica's expression darken. I give her an hour before she realizes she doesn't belong here, Lauren murmured loud enough for Lily to hear. Jessica forced a smile and strode toward Lily, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Wow, Lily, you really made it, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I have to say, that's pretty bold of you. Lily took a sip of her drink and met Jessica's gaze without flinching. Oh, Jessica, you're still worried about me? I thought you'd be over it by now. Jessica blinked, clearly caught off guard by Lily's confidence, but she quickly recovered. Of course not, she said smoothly. I'm just waiting to see how long it takes before people realize you don't belong here. Lily chuckled lightly. Funny, I was thinking the same thing about you. Jessica's eyes widened slightly, and for the first time that night, she looked as though she had lost control. Lauren nudged her arm. Jess. But Jessica was already too irritated to stop. You think just because you bought a dress and walked in here, you're suddenly one of us? Her voice was sharp, filled with frustration. You can wrap yourself in all the fancy fabric you want, but at the end of the day, you're still just you. Lily took a deep breath and nodded slowly. And you know what's funny? She said, tilting her head slightly. I like being me. Jessica opened her mouth to respond, but before she could say anything, a voice suddenly echoed through the ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone turned toward the stage where one of the event hosts stood, microphone in hand. Tonight, we are here to celebrate emerging talent in the world of art, And among our guests, we have someone who truly deserves special recognition. Lily frowned slightly. She had no idea what was happening. The host smiled. Please give a warm welcome to Lily. For a split second, the entire room went silent. Then applause erupted. Lily's heart stopped. Her? Jessica stood completely still, her expression frozen in shock. A man approached Lily, gesturing toward the stage. Lily, this way, please. Still stunned, she followed him, weaving through the tables as guests turned to watch. As she climbed the steps, she could feel Jessica's burning glare from across the room. When she reached the podium, the host grinned and handed her the microphone. Lily, he said, would you like to say a few words? Lily's hands trembled slightly as she looked out at the audience. At the professors, the renowned artists, the elite guests, at Jessica and Lauren, who were too stunned to react. She took a deep breath. A few days ago, she began, I wasn't sure if I belonged here, but tonight I realized something. It's not about being accepted. It's about believing you deserve the space you take up. More applause. Some guests smiled warmly. Others nodded in approval. And Jessica? Jessica disappeared into the crowd. As Lily stepped off the stage, she saw a familiar face waiting for her. Keanu Reeves. I told you, he said with a grin. You belonged here. Lily laughed, shaking her head in disbelief. Yeah, I think I finally believe it now. The gala was in full swing, with laughter and music filling the grand ballroom. The chandeliers above cast a golden glow over the guests, their elegant attire shimmering under the soft light. Lily stood near the balcony, taking a deep breath of the cool night air. The weight that had once pressed on her chest, the doubt, the fear, the need for approval, was gone. Tonight she hadn't just attended the gala, she had owned it. People had come up to her, congratulated her, asked about her work. Professors had praised her dedication. Art critics had shown interest in her paintings. And most surprising of all, she hadn't felt like an outsider. She had felt like she belonged. You're surprisingly calm for someone who just stole the spotlight, a voice said behind her. Lily turned to see Keanu Reeves standing beside her, hands in his pockets, an amused smile playing on his lips. She laughed softly. I think I'm still processing it. Keanu leaned against the railing. Well, for what it's worth, I think you handled it better than most. Lily gave him a curious look. You seem to know a lot about moments like this. He shrugged. Let's just say I've had my fair share of not belonging. She nodded, letting his words sink in. You said something earlier about how when you stop asking for permission, the world starts making room for you. I think I finally get what you meant. Keanu nodded, then glanced back at the crowd inside. So what's next for you? Lily thought for a moment. A few days ago, she would have said she didn't know, but now she smiled. Keep creating. Keep putting my work out there. Maybe even show my paintings in an actual gallery. Keanu raised an eyebrow. You should. I have a feeling a lot of people would want to see them. Lily chuckled. Including you? He grinned. Absolutely. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the cool breeze brushing against them. Then Keanu nodded toward the ballroom. You should get back in there. It's your night after all. Lily exhaled, but this time, it wasn't nerves. It was excitement. Yeah, she said with a smile. It is, isn't it? She turned to head back inside, but before she stepped away, she looked at him one last time. Thank you. For everything. Keanu's smile was warm, genuine. You did this on your own, Lily. I just made sure you saw it. Lily nodded, then stepped back into the ballroom. Not as the girl trying to blend into the crowd, but as someone who knew exactly who she was. As she moved through the room, people turned to her with admiration, with respect. The girl who once doubted herself had become the center of attention, not because of what she wore, but because of the confidence she carried. Jessica and Lauren were nowhere to be seen. Lily smiled to herself. She had won. And for the first time, she didn't feel like she had something to prove. She simply belonged. Lily stood in a bright, spacious gallery, staring at the wall where her own paintings were displayed. The soft lighting illuminated every stroke, every detail of her work. A small plaque beneath the artwork bore her name. She heard footsteps approaching behind her. Told you people would want to see them. Lily turned to see Keanu standing there, a knowing smile on his face. She grinned. Yeah, you did. They stood in silence for a moment, watching as visitors admired her art. She had come a long way, and she knew this was just the beginning. Lily had found her voice, and the world was finally listening. The soft hum of conversation filled the air as guests strolled through the grand art gallery, pausing in front of paintings, discussing techniques, and admiring the talent on display. The space was bathed in warm lighting, the walls lined with artwork from various emerging artists. Among them, a particular collection stood out, a series of vibrant, emotional paintings that seemed to tell a story of resilience, confidence, and belonging. At the center of the room, Lily stood in front of her own work, a mixture of nervousness and pride swirling inside her. This wasn't just any exhibition. This was her first solo showcase. A year ago, she had never imagined this moment. The gala had been a turning point, but it was what came after that truly defined her journey. She had poured her soul into her art, refusing to let self-doubt hold her back. She had worked tirelessly, honing her craft, sharing her work, and finally, getting noticed by the right people. Now here she was, standing in a gallery filled with people who had come to see her work. A familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. I gotta say, this is even better than I imagined. Lily turned, a smile already forming as she saw Keanu Reeves standing beside her, hands casually tucked into his jacket pockets, his expression filled with quiet admiration. You actually came, she said, shaking her head with a small laugh. You say that like I'd miss this? Keanu replied. I told you people would want to see your work. And look around. Seems like I was right. Lily glanced at the guests scattered throughout the gallery, watching as they examined her paintings, murmuring to each other about the depth and emotion behind them. She exhaled softly, shaking her head in disbelief. I still can't believe this is happening. Keanu tilted his head slightly. Why not? Lily hesitated. I guess I spent so long believing that I wasn't enough, that no matter how hard I tried, I'd never truly belong in this world. Keanu studied her for a moment, then said, And do you still feel that way? Lily looked at her artwork again, then back at the people admiring it. A small, confident smile tugged at her lips. No, she said, her voice steady. Not anymore. Keanu's expression softened. Good, because the truth is, you were always enough. You just had to see it for yourself. Before Lily could respond, a woman in an elegant black dress approached them, a warm smile on her face. Lily, your work is incredible, she said, extending a hand. I'm Claire Bennett, a curator from the London Modern Art Museum. We've been following your progress, and we'd love to discuss the possibility of featuring your work in our next exhibition. Lily's breath caught in her throat. Wait, you want my work in a London gallery? Claire nodded. Absolutely. Your art tells a story that needs to be shared. If you're interested, we can set up a meeting to discuss the details. Lily blinked, her mind racing. A year ago, she had been afraid to even dream this big. Now opportunities she had never dared to hope for were becoming reality. She turned to Keanu, who gave her an encouraging nod, then back to Claire. I'd love to, she said, a wide smile breaking across her face. Claire beamed. Wonderful. I'll be in touch. As Claire walked away, Lily turned to Keanu, still processing everything. I'm going to have my art in a London gallery, she whispered in awe. Keanu grinned. Told you. Lily let out a small laugh, shaking her head. This is insane. Keanu chuckled. No, this is what happens when you stop waiting for permission and start taking up space. Lily nodded slowly, realizing how true his words were. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just dreaming, she was living it. And this was only the beginning. The streets of London buzzed with energy as Lily walked toward the entrance of the Modern Art Museum. A light drizzle had begun to fall, the city lights reflecting off the damp pavement, giving the night a magical glow. She clutched the invitation in her hands, her name printed elegantly in gold lettering. Lily Myers, featured artist. She still couldn't believe it. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind, preparing her work for the exhibition, meeting with curators, traveling to new places she had only ever seen in pictures. But now standing here, about to walk into her first international showcase, it all felt surreal. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. The grand hall was filled with guests, art critics, collectors, journalists, and fellow artists, all engaged in conversation. Waiters moved gracefully through the crowd, offering glasses of champagne, but Lily barely noticed any of it, because there, on the main wall, was her collection. Her paintings, each one telling a part of her journey, were displayed under soft lighting, drawing people in. She watched as visitors stood in front of them, discussing the emotion behind each brushstroke, admiring the depth of her work. It was happening. She belonged here. A familiar voice pulled her from her thoughts. "You know, I'm starting to think you might actually be famous soon." Lily turned, a wide smile spreading across her face as she saw Keanu standing a few feet away, dressed in a classic black suit, looking every bit as effortlessly cool as ever. She laughed. "I think I still have a long way to go before that happens." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "Really? Because last time I checked, your work is in a London museum. That's kind of a big deal." Lily shook her head, still smiling. "Okay, maybe a little." Keanu chuckled, then glanced at her paintings. "They look incredible." Lily exhaled softly, looking around at everything she had worked for. "It's crazy, isn't it? A year ago, I was just some girl trying to prove she belonged. Now, I don't feel like I have to prove anything." Keanu nodded approvingly. "That's because you don't. You earned this." Just then, a museum curator approached, holding a glass of champagne. "Lily, I have to say, your work has completely captivated our guests tonight," he said warmly. "We've already had inquiries from collectors interested in purchasing some of your pieces." Lily's breath caught. "People want to buy my paintings?" The curator chuckled. "Oh, many people." Lily felt like she was floating. Keanu nudged her playfully. "Told you this would happen." She shook her head in disbelief. "I don't know how to process this." Keanu smiled. "Then don't. Just enjoy it." As the night went on, Lily spoke with collectors, curators, and fellow artists, each conversation filling her with more confidence. At one point, she caught a glimpse of herself in the reflection of a glass panel. She didn't see the shy, uncertain girl she had been a year ago. She saw a woman who knew her worth, a woman who had faced cruelty and doubt but refused to let it define her, a woman who had found her place in the world. By the end of the night, as the last guests began to leave, Keanu found her standing near her paintings, a quiet smile on her face. "You did it," he said simply. Lily turned to him, her eyes shining. "Yeah, I did," Keanu nodded. "And you're just getting started." Lily took one last look around the gallery, her heart full. She had once believed she needed permission to exist in these spaces. Now she knew. The world was hers to claim, and she would never let anyone tell her otherwise again.